If you just glance at this video, it kind of looks like it could have been taken from a video game. But what you're actually looking at is hundreds of millions of points of data that have been turned into a mesh and have been overlaid with images to create a near perfect digital replica of this building. This technology has been used to offer a whole new three-dimensional perspective to the ongoing destruction of some of Ukraine's most important historic sites. To understand why, it helps to look back at the very beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine back in February. When Russia began shelling Ukraine, it became clear almost from the outset that Moscow had more than just military targets in its crosshairs. Entire residential districts and critical infrastructure were being wiped out. But amongst all the destruction, reports began to emerge of another type of target being shelled over and over and over. These were culturally significant sites, places intertwined with Ukraine's national identity. Museums were looted and shelled, historic buildings turned to rubble. Even monuments like this Holocaust memorial near Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine have been damaged. By August 2022, UN monitoring had identified more than 170 cultural sites that had either been damaged or destroyed since the invasion began back in February. Ukraine's Ministry of Culture puts that number at more like 400 sites. US President Joe Biden described these attacks as an attempt by Russian leader Vladimir Putin to try to extinguish Ukrainian culture.
Attacking schools, nurseries, hospitals, museums.
But as we've seen time and time again in the war, the Ukrainians have been creative in their resistance. Artworks from museums were packed and hidden, monuments sandbagged, but there was little that could be done to protect Ukraine's historic buildings from Russian shells, at least not physically anyway. French structural engineer Emmanuel Durand is an expert in capturing 3D data. He went on a 17-day trip across Ukraine, documenting the destruction of cultural sites. Durand took with him this fist-sized laser scanner, which bounces light off surfaces to build these detailed three-dimensional models of buildings. This church, on the outskirts of Chernihiv, was one of his first stops. It had been shelled, and Russian forces had set up a base inside. When they withdrew from the area in April, the church was left in ruins.
So you arrive at that site, and the church is surrounded by damage, burned vehicles, trucks, tanks, everything. And you still find all pieces of a day-to-day life, like food cans, underwear. It looks like it was just yesterday,
He also scanned this youth library in Chernihiv, once home to a museum for Ukrainian antiquities. This 19th century Gothic revival building withstood shelling in the years after World War I and also during World War II. Within weeks of the Russian invasion, the historic building had been blown to pieces. Not only are these 3D models raising awareness of the ongoing destruction of Ukrainian cultural sites, they're also preserving the sites as they were during the war for future generations. This type of 3D scene reconstruction can also be used in war crimes investigations. Under international law, the intentional destruction of cultural heritage is considered a war crime. I spoke with lawyer Darina Podorna from the Regional Center for Human Rights, a Ukrainian NGO. She's been investigating a number of alleged attacks on cultural sites, including the shelling of the Mariupol Drama Theatre. She's planning on submitting the evidence to Ukraine's national prosecutor and the International Criminal Court.
If we could not stand for our country, for our language now, then we could not stand as a people, as a person, as an individual in the future, because we will lose everything. We will lose our origins, we will lose our roots, we will lose our country, language, mostly everything that could make us individual.